close your eyes, and travel back to a time when the world was young, and the Nile River was the center of all life. In the silence of the ancient desert, the people of Egypt looked up at the stars and asked the same questions humans have always asked. Who created the world? Who controls life and death? And what happens after we close our eyes for the final time? To them, the answers lived in powerful gods and mysterious forces. The sun god Ra sailed across the sky each day in a golden boat. Osiris ruled the land of the dead, while Anubis watched over lost souls, weighing their hearts against a feather of truth. Every storm, every sunrise, every shadow carried divine meaning. These were not just stories, they were the foundation of Egyptian life. Pharaohs ruled not only as kings but as living gods. Temples rose toward the heavens. Spells were whispered in the dark. And magic was not fantasy, it was law. Tonight, as you rest, you will enter a world older than time itself. A world of creation, chaos, divine battles, forgotten monsters, and eternal life. You will walk through the halls of the gods, follow the soul's journey after death, and uncover the secrets that shaped one of the most mysterious civilizations in human history. Relax, breathe, and let the story of Egyptian mythology carry you gently into the ancient world. Long before pyramids touched the sky and long before the names of kings were carved in stone, there was only water and silence. The ancient Egyptians believed that before the world existed, there was a vast, endless ocean of dark, still water called Nun. It had no shore, no sky, and no stars. It was quiet, timeless, and eternal. From this silent water, the first light appeared. That first light took the form of a god named Adam, the self-created one. According to one of the most important Egyptian creation stories, Adam rose from none as a mound of land, standing alone in the emptiness. There was no earth beneath his feet and no sky above his head. Only darkness, water, and the beginning of awareness. Feeling lonely in the vast silence, Adam created other gods. In the ancient Egyptian belief, he brought them into existence through breath and moisture. From him came Shu, the god of air, and Tefnut, the goddess of moisture and rain. Together they represented the breath of the world and the touch of life. Shu and Tefnut then created their own children, Geb, the god of the earth, and Nut, the goddess of the sky. At first, earth and sky were tightly joined, locked in an endless embrace. There was no room between them and the world was trapped in darkness. To bring light and order, Shu lifted Nut high above Geb, separating the sky from the earth. This single act created the space where life could exist. Above was the star-filled sky. Below was the solid earth. Between them formed the world where humans, animals, and plants would one day live. This is known as the Heliopolitan creation myth, one of the most famous Egyptian stories of how everything began. But Egypt was a land of many cities, and each city had its own version of how the world started. In Memphis, the people believed in a different creator god named Ptah. Ptah did not create the world through physical actions but through thought and speech. In this story, Ptah imagined the world in his heart and spoke its name into existence. Mountains, rivers, animals, and even the other gods were formed by the power of his voice. Here, creation was not forceful, it was quiet, deliberate, and intelligent. In Hermopolis, another powerful version of creation was told. This story spoke of 8 ancient gods, known as the Ogdoad, who represented the chaos that existed before the world. They were gods of darkness, stillness, hiddenness, and infinite water. Together, they stirred the silent waters of Nun until a cosmic egg formed. From this egg, the sun was born, bringing light to the world for the first time. In every version of the story, one truth remained the same. The world did not begin with violence but with balance. From darkness came light. From chaos came order. The Egyptians believed that creation was not a single event, but a process that continued every single day. Each morning, when the sun rose over the horizon, it was seen as a reenactment of the very first sunrise. The struggle between darkness and light was not just in the sky, it existed in the heart of all living things. For the ancient Egyptians, the universe was fragile. Without balance, the world could fall back into chaos. That is why they honored the gods, built great temples, and lived their lives according to sacred laws. Creation to them was sacred. The world was a gift born from silence, light born from darkness, and order born from an endless ocean of stillness. And every night, as the sun disappeared beyond the horizon, they believed that the world returned briefly to that original chaos, only to be born again with the morning light. In the stillness of ancient Egypt, the world was alive not only with the land, the Nile, and the desert, but with gods and goddesses who guided every moment of life. To the Egyptians, the divine was not distant. It was near, tangible, and present in everything they saw, the rising sun, the fertile river, the stars above, and the changing seasons. At the heart of this pantheon was Ra, the sun god. Each morning, Ra sailed across the sky in his golden solar boat, bringing light and warmth to the land. He was not only the creator of life but its sustainer. As the sun set, he journeyed through the underworld, defeating chaos each night to rise again at dawn. Ra represented continuity, strength, and the eternal cycle of life and death. Beside him stood Osiris, the god of the afterlife and rebirth. He ruled over the underworld with justice and compassion, ensuring that the souls of the dead found balance in the afterlife. Osiris's story was one of loss and renewal. Betrayed by his brother Set, who embodied chaos and disorder, Osiris was resurrected through the devotion of his wife Isis, the goddess of magic and healing. Isis's wisdom and power were unmatched, and through her life and order returned even in the face of death. Horus, the falcon-headed god, embodied kingship and protection. He was the son of Osiris and Isis and the eternal rival of Set. Horus represented the ideal ruler, brave, just, and vigilant. Pharaohs of Egypt were believed to be Horus incarnate on earth, bridging the divine and mortal realms. The Egyptians also honored Thoth, the god of wisdom, writing, and the moon. He recorded the deeds of humans and gods alike, guiding the balance of the universe through knowledge. Without Thoth there would be no law, no record, and no measurement of justice. Among the goddesses, Maat was unique. She did not represent a person but the concept of truth, balance, and cosmic order. All gods and humans were bound to her principles. The scales used to weigh the hearts of the dead against her feather ensured that life and death followed harmony, and that chaos was never allowed to dominate. Other gods played specialized roles. Anubis, the jackal-headed guardian of tombs; Hathor, goddess of love, joy, and music; Sekhmet, the lion-headed goddess of war and healing; and Batet, protector of home and family. Each deity was a reflection of nature, human experience, or the cosmic balance of life. Temples across Egypt were dedicated to these gods, filled with statues, altars, and offerings. Priests performed rituals to maintain harmony between the gods and humans. Festivals, music, and prayers celebrated the divine presence, reinforcing the belief that every action, however small, was part of a greater order. The gods and goddesses were not distant or abstract. They had personalities, desires, and rivalries. Tales of their interactions explained the cycles of nature, the movements of the stars, and the rise and fall of kings. Through these stories, the Egyptians found guidance, protection, and a framework to understand their world. Even the landscape itself was seen as divine. The Nile, the deserts, and the fertile lands were sacred, connected to the will of the gods. Life thrived in this harmony between humans, nature, and divinity. Every grain of sand, every ripple in the river, every gust of wind carried meaning. The pantheon was vast, yet interconnected. Gods were born, they married, they fought, and they reconciled. Their stories were repeated through generations, carved in stone, painted on walls, and whispered in rituals. Each myth reinforced the structure of the universe and the human role within it. In the calm of night, Egyptians looked at the stars and remembered these divine beings, understanding that the world they lived in was a delicate balance maintained by gods and goddesses. The sun would rise again, the Nile would flood, and life would continue, all guided by the unseen hands of Ra, Osiris, Isis, Horus, and the countless others who shaped the destiny of Egypt. Through reverence and ritual, the people aligned themselves with this cosmic order. They learned that the gods were not merely objects of worship, but living symbols of truth, justice, and balance. Their stories were a mirror of humanity, a guide for life, and a bridge between the mortal and the divine. As you drift into sleep, imagine walking among these divine figures, hearing the soft whispers of prayers along the Nile, and feeling the calm presence of gods who have watched over Egypt for millennia. Their stories are eternal, as timeless as the desert sands and the flowing river, inviting you to rest, reflect, and dream of a world where every sunrise and every star is touched by the divine. Among the many stories of ancient Egypt, none captures the imagination and spiritual depth of its people like the myth of Osiris. This tale is not only a story of life, death, and resurrection but also a reflection of the Egyptian understanding of order, justice, and the eternal cycle of nature. Osiris was the beloved king of Egypt, wise and just, who taught humans the ways of agriculture, law, and morality. Under his rule, the land flourished. Crops grew tall along the Nile and the people prospered. His queen, Isis, was equally revered, known for her wisdom, magical prowess, and devotion. Together they embodied harmony and balance. Yet peace in the world of gods is fragile. Osiris's brother, Set, was the embodiment of chaos, envy and violence. He could not bear to see Osiris prosper and sought to overthrow him. Set's jealousy led him to devise a cunning plan, a beautifully decorated chest crafted to fit Osiris perfectly. In a feast meant to celebrate Osiris, Set tricked him into lying inside the chest. In that instant, Set sealed it and cast it into the Nile, sending Osiris into the depths of the river. The land mourned. Crops withered and darkness spread over Egypt. Isis, filled with grief and determination, embarked on a long journey to recover her husband. She searched tirelessly along the riverbanks, guided by magic and divine insight. Finally, she discovered the chest containing Osiris's body and brought him back to Egypt. Using her knowledge of spells and incantations, Isis performed the first resurrection, allowing Osiris to live again, though no longer as a mortal king. Osiris then became the ruler of the underworld, guiding the souls of the dead and maintaining the balance between life and death. His death and rebirth symbolized the eternal cycle of nature, the flooding and retreating of the Nile, the seasons, and the promise of renewal in every sunrise. The myth also tells of Horus, the son of Osiris and Isis. Born in secrecy to protect him from Set, Horus grew strong and determined. When he reached adulthood, he challenged Set to reclaim his father's throne. Their battles were fierce and symbolic, representing the struggle between order and chaos. Eventually, Horus triumphed, restoring balance and justice to the world of the living and ensuring the continuity of divine kingship. Through this cycle, the Egyptians learned profound lessons. Life, death, and rebirth were intertwined. Chaos could never fully dominate order. Osiris's story reminded them that justice, wisdom, and devotion were the foundations of both society and the cosmos. Each pharaoh, identified with Horus in life and Osiris in death, carried forward this sacred legacy, bridging the human and divine. Even today, the Osiris myth continues to inspire. It is a story of resilience, devotion, and the eternal rhythm of the universe. As night falls and the Nile reflects the soft light of the moon, imagine Isis searching along its banks, guided by love and magic, and Osiris ruling the underworld with quiet authority, reminding all that death is but a passage to renewal. In the heart of ancient Egyptian civilization, there was a principle more powerful than any king, more enduring than any temple, and more vital than the rising sun. This principle was Ma'at, the concept of truth, balance, harmony, and cosmic order. To the Egyptians, Ma'at was not merely an idea. It was the invisible thread that held the universe together, the guiding force of life, law, and morality. Ma'at was personified as a goddess, often depicted with a single ostrich feather atop her head. Her presence was subtle yet omnipresent, felt in the calm flow of the Nile, the orderly cycle of the seasons, and the rising and setting of the sun. Every aspect of life was bound by her principles. When the world was in Ma'at, humans and gods existed in harmony. When it faltered, chaos, injustice, and suffering ensued. The pharaohs of Egypt were the earthly guardians of Ma'at. Their duty was to maintain balance not only in their kingdoms but also in the cosmos itself. Laws, taxes, and rituals were designed to reflect the goddess's principles. Pharaohs judged disputes, led ceremonies, and upheld justice as a reflection of Ma'at's order. In doing so, they ensured that society remained stable, prosperous, and aligned with the will of the gods. Ma'at's influence extended beyond politics into everyday life. Farmers relied on her to maintain the predictable flooding of the Nile, which brought fertile soil for crops. Families followed social rules, rituals, and moral conduct to live in harmony. Craftsmen, priests, and scribes all contributed to sustaining Ma'at through their work, offerings, and prayers. The balance of all things depended on collective adherence to this sacred order. One of the most profound applications of Ma'at was in the afterlife. Ancient Egyptians believed that after death, the soul faced judgment before Osiris. The heart of the deceased was weighed against Ma'at's feather. A heart heavy with deceit, greed, or evil would tip the scale, and the soul would face destruction. A heart aligned with truth and balance allowed the soul to continue into the eternal afterlife. This practice emphasized that moral integrity and ethical conduct were essential not only in life but for eternity. Ma'at also shaped Egyptian mythology and cosmology. The gods themselves acted according to her principles. When chaos threatened, as in the battles between Ra and Apep or Set's rebellion against Osiris, the restoration of Ma'at was the ultimate goal. Victory, justice, and creation were measured against her eternal standard. Even in art, literature, and ritual, the influence of Ma'at was evident. Temples were built with perfect symmetry, statues were carved with precise proportions, and stories illustrated the struggle between order and chaos. The Egyptians understood that balance was not static. It required constant vigilance, attention, and devotion. Ma'at was both a guide and a mirror, showing individuals and rulers alike the way to live rightly. Through Ma'at, the Egyptians saw a universe in which every action had meaning and every life had purpose. The principle reminded them that truth, fairness, and harmony were not optional, but essential for survival and prosperity. As night falls and stars reflect upon the Nile, imagine the invisible feather of Ma'at balancing the cosmos, guiding kings, gods, and mortals alike, ensuring that life flows in rhythm with the eternal order. To live in accordance with Ma'at was to live in alignment with the universe itself, a calm, steady, and profound understanding that shaped the Egyptian world for thousands of years and continues to echo through history today. In ancient Egypt, life was only one part of existence. Beyond the world of the living lay a realm that was both mysterious and eternal, the afterlife. Egyptians believed that death was not an end but a transformation, a journey guided by divine forces and bound by the principles of Ma'at, the eternal order. At the moment of death, the soul, known as the Ka, separated from the physical body. This journey was both delicate and perilous. The Egyptians believed that the body must be preserved, and that is why mummification became a sacred ritual. Through careful embalming, the Ka could recognize and return to the body, ensuring continuity in the next world. The tombs, filled with offerings, amulets, and inscriptions, served as both protection and guidance for the departed soul. The afterlife itself was envisioned as a mirror of the earthly world, yet perfected and eternal. It was called the Duat, a realm where the deceased could live in harmony, provided they were judged worthy. Central to this journey was the weighing of the heart, overseen by Anubis, the jackal-headed god. The heart, symbolizing the soul and conscience, was weighed against Ma'at's feather of truth. Those who lived in balance, honesty, and righteousness passed into the eternal paradise. Those whose hearts were heavy with wrongdoing were devoured by Ammit, the fearsome devourer of souls, ensuring that chaos did not corrupt the cosmos. Osiris, the lord of the underworld, presided over this realm. He embodied both death and renewal, offering hope that life continued beyond the grave. In some beliefs, the journey of the soul was aided by spells from the Book of the Dead, guiding the deceased past dangers, monsters, and deceptive illusions, ensuring safe passage to the eternal fields. The Egyptians also believed in multiple components of the soul: the Ba, the personality; the Ka, the life force; and the Ak, the transfigured spirit that achieved unity with the divine. Rituals, prayers, and offerings ensured that these aspects remained in harmony, allowing the deceased to flourish in the afterlife as they had in life. Beyond individual souls, the afterlife reinforced cosmic order. Festivals and temple rituals celebrated the gods, reminding the living that Ma'at governed all realms, the world of the living, the world of the dead, and the invisible forces connecting them. Life, death, and rebirth were intertwined, and every act of devotion, honesty, and balance strengthened the eternal order. Through these beliefs, the Egyptians cultivated a profound respect for life, morality, and the passage of time. Death was not feared but understood as a natural stage, a continuation of existence under divine guidance. Temples, tombs, and sacred texts served as bridges between the worlds, providing comfort, purpose, and a sense of connection to the eternal cosmos. As night falls and the stars reflect upon the desert and the Nile, imagine a soul embarking on its journey through the Duat, guided by Anubis, judged by Osiris, and embraced by Ma'at's balance. Every shadow, every whisper of wind, and every glimmering light was part of this sacred passage, an eternal testament to a civilization that understood death not as an end, but as the continuation of life in divine harmony. The Egyptians' belief in the afterlife influenced their culture, art, and society profoundly. Temples and tombs, rituals and festivals, all celebrated the eternal journey, teaching that life, morality, and devotion were inseparable from the divine rhythm of the cosmos. Their vision of eternity reminds us that life is sacred, that balance is essential, and that even beyond the mortal world, the order of the universe endures. In ancient Egypt, kings were more than rulers, they were living gods. The pharaoh was not merely a political figure but a divine intermediary, bridging the human world and the eternal realm of the gods. To the Egyptians, the concept of kingship was sacred, and the pharaoh's authority came from the heavens, embodied by gods such as Horus and Ra. From the earliest dynasties, pharaohs were revered as the embodiment of cosmic order. They maintained Ma'at, ensuring balance between chaos and harmony in both the land and the heavens. By upholding laws, leading military campaigns, and performing sacred rituals, These rulers guaranteed the prosperity of Egypt and the favor of the gods. Temples were not merely centers of worship but symbols of their divine authority, constructed with perfect symmetry and adorned with hieroglyphs that told stories of their power, wisdom, and devotion. Among the earliest and most celebrated rulers was Narmer, also known as Menes, often credited with uniting Upper and Lower Egypt. His victories were not just political, they were cosmic acts, affirming that the gods had chosen him to bring order to a divided land. The pharaoh's crown, combining the white of Upper Egypt and the red of Lower Egypt, symbolized this unity, and every decision he made was guided by the principles of Ma'at. As centuries passed, other legendary rulers rose to prominence. Djoser, the creator of the first pyramid at Saqqara, demonstrated how divine kingship extended beyond the mortal life into eternity. Through monumental architecture, pharaohs proclaimed their closeness to the gods and their role in ensuring Egypt's stability. Pyramids were not only tombs, they were eternal bridges between earth and the heavens, guiding the pharaoh's soul to join the divine realm. Hatshepsut, one of the few female pharaohs, ruled with wisdom and strategic brilliance. She emphasized trade and diplomacy, expanding Egypt's influence beyond its borders. Her mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari reflected her divine legitimacy, adorned with carvings that portrayed her as chosen by Ammonius-Ra. Hatshepsut's reign exemplified the delicate balance between human ambition and divine authority, showing that kingship was both a duty and a sacred calling. The military prowess of pharaohs like Thutmose III and Ramesses II further demonstrated divine kingship. Battles were not merely earthly conflicts but cosmic struggles, reflecting the eternal tension between order and chaos. Victories were celebrated with monuments, inscriptions, and temples that honored the gods, reinforcing the belief that the pharaoh's success was divinely sanctioned. Each triumph maintained Ma'at, ensuring the prosperity of Egypt and the continuation of the natural order. Divine kingship was also reinforced through religious rituals. Pharaohs performed daily offerings to the gods, participated in festivals, and led ceremonies that symbolized their eternal bond with deities such as Ra, Osiris, and Horus. Their actions were never merely ceremonial, they were believed to sustain the very fabric of the universe. In the eyes of the Egyptians, a pharaoh who failed to uphold Ma'at risked not only political instability but cosmic disorder, bringing calamity to the land and the heavens alike. The concept of the pharaoh's divine nature extended to funerary practices. Upon death, the ruler's body was preserved meticulously, ensuring that the Ka, or life force, could continue its journey into the afterlife. The construction of grand tombs, such as those in the Valley of the Kings, symbolized the eternal connection between the living ruler and the gods. Wall paintings, inscriptions, and sacred objects within the tomb guided the pharaoh's spirit, reinforcing the idea that divine kingship transcended mortality. Throughout Egyptian history, rulers were often depicted with symbols of power: the crook and flail, the double crown, and the ankh. Each symbol carried meaning beyond earthly authority. The crook represented guidance and care for the people, the flail symbolized the pharaoh's ability to punish and maintain order, and the ankh embodied eternal life. Together, these emblems conveyed the divine nature of kingship, a constant reminder that the pharaoh was both protector and intermediary between humans and gods. Pharaohs also forged alliances with priests and temples to strengthen their divine legitimacy. The priesthood played a critical role in rituals, interpreting omens and maintaining sacred knowledge. Temples were centers of political as well as spiritual power. By collaborating with religious institutions, pharaohs ensured that their rule was recognized both on earth and in the divine realms. The stories of legendary rulers illustrate that divine kingship was not static but dynamic, blending governance, religion, and cosmic philosophy. The pharaoh was expected to act as the earthly reflection of Horus, the god of kingship and protection, and as the mortal embodiment of Ra, the sun god. Their lives and actions maintained balance in the natural world, ensured justice, and connected humanity to the eternal order of the universe. Even minor rulers, governors, and regional leaders were judged against this ideal of divine kingship. Pharaohs set the standard, demonstrating that authority was inseparable from morality, cosmic responsibility, and devotion to the gods. The Egyptians believed that every temple, every law, every flood and harvest reflected the will of the divine ruler, linking ordinary life to the celestial order. Legendary rulers also left lasting legacies through monumental inscriptions and historical records. Victory stelae, temple reliefs, and royal decrees were created not only to record events but to remind future generations of the pharaoh's sacred duty. Their stories reinforced the belief that divine kingship was eternal, a principle that endured even after death through the monuments, myths and rituals they left behind. The intertwining of divine authority and earthly rule shaped every aspect of Egyptian civilization. Art, architecture, governance, and religion all reflected the belief that pharaohs were more than mortals. They were the living embodiment of order, law, and cosmic harmony. Their reigns were measured not only by territorial expansion or wealth but by their ability to maintain ma'at, the delicate balance that allowed Egypt to thrive. In the quiet of night, one can imagine the pharaoh standing before his people, performing sacred rites, his presence a link between humanity and divinity. Every sunrise reaffirmed his connection to Ra, every law reflected the will of Ma'at, and every act of justice ensured that the world remained in balance. Through these rulers, the Egyptians understood the sacredness of life, the fragility of order, and the eternal rhythm of the cosmos. The story of divine kingship reminds us that ancient Egypt was a civilization unlike any other. Its rulers were not only political figures but sacred stewards of the universe. Their lives, actions, and legacies embodied the eternal struggle to uphold order, balance, and harmony. Through their guidance, the world of gods and humans remained intertwined, teaching lessons of morality, duty, and devotion that continue to resonate across millennia. In the shadowed corners of ancient Egypt, where the desert meets the Nile and the night sky stretches endlessly, the Egyptians imagined a world not only of gods and humans but of creatures both terrifying and powerful. These beings, often called monsters or supernatural entities, were integral to their mythology. They represented chaos, danger, protection, and the mysterious forces of the universe that humans could neither control nor fully understand. One of the most feared was Apep, also known as Apophis, the great serpent of chaos. Apep was the eternal enemy of Ra, the sun god, and lay in wait each night in the underworld, seeking to stop the sun's journey and plunge the world into darkness. Egyptians believed that without vigilance, Apep could overthrow order, destroy life, and bring calamity. Priests performed rituals, chants, and magical incantations nightly to protect Ra, demonstrating the intertwining of the supernatural and daily life. Another fascinating entity was Ammit, the devourer of the unworthy. Half lion, half crocodile, and part hippopotamus, Ammit awaited the hearts of those judged in the afterlife. In the weighing of the heart ceremony, if a heart was heavy with sin and deceit, Ammit would consume it, preventing the soul from entering eternal life. Her presence reinforced morality, reminding Egyptians that ethical conduct was not optional but essential for both the mortal and spiritual realms. The Egyptians also imagined demons and spirits, each with specialized roles. Some were protectors of tombs, guarding sacred spaces from intruders. Others were bringers of disease, punishment, or misfortune, embodying the consequences of disorder or impiety. Bes, a dwarf-like deity, was an unusual figure, a protector of households and children, his fierce appearance intended to scare away evil spirits. Tarit, the hippopotamus goddess, safeguarded women during childbirth, showing that even terrifying beings could provide care and protection. Monsters and supernatural beings were not only feared, they were respected. They reflected the delicate balance between chaos and order, highlighting that the world was vast, mysterious, and often unpredictable. Egyptians sought to understand these forces through stories, rituals, and offerings, ensuring that both gods and monsters were appeased. By acknowledging the power of supernatural beings, they maintained harmony in the cosmos and in their own lives. Some supernatural creatures were guardians of knowledge and sacred places. Serpopards, mythical creatures with serpent-like necks and leopard bodies, appeared in temple reliefs, symbolizing vigilance and the containment of chaos. Sphinxes, with human heads and lion bodies, represented wisdom and strength, standing at temple entrances as protectors. Their presence reminded humans that the divine and supernatural were intertwined with everyday existence. Stories of these beings often illustrated moral and cosmic lessons. For example, the nightly battle between Ra and Apep symbolized the constant struggle between light and darkness, order and chaos. Tales of Ammit and the weighing of the heart underscored the importance of truth, justice, and ethical behavior. Through these narratives, Egyptians explained natural disasters, disease, and misfortune as manifestations of supernatural forces, while also providing a framework for understanding life, death, and morality. Even gods themselves could exhibit monstrous traits. Sekhmet, the lion-headed goddess of war, represented both destruction and healing. Her rage could bring devastation, but her power also restored order when chaos threatened. Similarly, Set, god of storms and disorder, embodied the unpredictable forces of nature, showing that the divine world included both benevolence and danger. Temples, tombs, and texts frequently depicted these beings in vivid imagery. Hieroglyphs, murals, and carvings illustrated serpents coiling, lions roaring, and spirits hovering over tombs. Priests and magicians carried amulets and performed rituals to invoke protection, heal the sick, or ward off malevolent forces. In art and ritual alike, monsters and supernatural beings were reminders of the unseen powers shaping life and death. The Egyptians' perception of these beings was complex. They were neither wholly evil nor purely good. Many served dual roles, threatening chaos yet protecting sacred order. This duality reflected the Egyptian worldview. Life was a balance between opposing forces, and humans needed to respect both. By understanding monsters, humans could navigate dangers, honor the gods, and maintain Ma'at. Legends also included mythical hybrids and magical animals. Winged serpents, crocodile-headed spirits, and lion-bodied creatures populated stories of sacred lakes, deserts, and underworld paths. Each creature carried symbolism: courage, vigilance, wisdom, or the consequences of imbalance. Their tales were interwoven with practical wisdom, teaching that the natural and supernatural worlds were inseparable and that humans must act with care, devotion, and awareness of cosmic order. Through generations, stories of monsters and supernatural beings shaped Egyptian culture, inspiring art, literature, rituals, and daily practice. They provided explanations for phenomena beyond human understanding: floods, disease, eclipses, or sudden death, framing these events within a moral and cosmic structure. By respecting these beings, humans acknowledged the limits of their power and the necessity of divine guidance. At night, as the Nile reflected the starlit sky, Egyptians imagined monsters stirring in unseen realms, gods battling serpents, and spirits traversing the earth. The world was alive with forces that demanded attention, reverence, and understanding. In this way, supernatural beings were never far from daily life. They were reminders of the delicate balance between safety and danger, order and chaos, life and death. In the calm of night, as you drift to sleep, picture these creatures moving silently through temples, deserts, and underworld pathways. Imagine the serpent of chaos curling around hidden corners, the devourer of souls patiently waiting for truth, and guardians standing vigilant over sacred spaces. They are both terrifying and protective, a testament to the Egyptians' profound understanding of the unseen forces that shape the world. By embracing these beings in stories and rituals, the Egyptians lived in harmony with both the visible and invisible realms. They understood that monsters, spirits, and supernatural forces were not merely fears to avoid but elements of a universe bound by law, balance, and divine order. Through these narratives, ancient Egypt revealed a world rich with mystery, lessons, and enduring wisdom. In ancient Egypt, the world was alive with possibilities beyond human comprehension. Transformation and magic were at the heart of Egyptian mythology, illustrating how life, death, and the divine could be shaped, changed, and renewed. These stories were not only entertainment, they were lessons guiding humans on morality, the power of knowledge, and the delicate balance of the cosmos. Magic, or Heka, was considered a natural force, flowing through the universe and accessible to gods, priests, and even humans. Heka allowed deities to intervene in the mortal world, heal the sick, protect the innocent, or punish the wicked. It was neither good nor evil by itself. It was a tool, a manifestation of cosmic power that demanded understanding and respect. One of the most famous stories of transformation involved Osiris. Betrayed and killed by his brother Set, Osiris was resurrected by his wife Isis. Through spells, devotion, and divine intervention, Osiris returned to life, becoming the ruler of the underworld. This myth demonstrates that transformation was not merely physical but spiritual, symbolizing renewal, justice, and eternal life. Through this tale, Egyptians understood that even in death, there was the possibility of rebirth and that magic could bridge mortal limitations. Gods themselves frequently changed form. Horus, the falcon-headed god, represented kingship, but could also appear in human form to guide or protect. Thoth, the god of wisdom and magic, could transform to deliver knowledge, while Sekhmet, the lion-headed goddess, could switch between destruction and healing, demonstrating the duality inherent in divine power. Transformation was a reminder that identity, purpose, and destiny were fluid, guided by higher forces and cosmic law. Magic was also central to daily life. Priests wielded it in rituals, using spells to protect the living and the dead. Amulets, charms, and inscriptions carried protective and transformative power. Magic explained phenomena beyond ordinary understanding: the changing of the seasons, sudden recoveries from illness, or the divine favor bestowed upon a ruler. Every ritual and incantation was an acknowledgement that the world was permeated with unseen forces. Myths of transformation also addressed human experiences. Stories of mortals turning into animals, gods adopting human form, or spirits influencing events illustrated lessons in humility, courage, and respect for the natural and supernatural order. They emphasized that change was inevitable and that understanding it required wisdom, patience, and moral alignment with Ma'at. One notable tale involves the goddess Isis transforming to rescue her son Horus from danger. Using magic and disguise, she navigated treacherous lands and outwitted enemies, highlighting the power of intellect, strategy, and devotion. This story, repeated through generations, became a model for problem-solving, resilience, and the ethical use of power. Even the elements of nature were intertwined with transformation and magic. The Nile, the sun, and the stars were not static. They were embodiments of divine forces capable of change. Festivals celebrated these cycles. The flooding of the Nile represented renewal and abundance. The rising sun symbolized rebirth and victory over darkness, and celestial events were seen as reflections of divine interventions. Transformation was also central to funerary practices. The deceased were believed to undergo metamorphosis in the afterlife, achieving the status of an Akh, a transfigured spirit capable of eternal existence. Spells from the Book of the Dead guided them, transforming fear into empowerment, chaos into order, and mortality into immortality. The careful preservation of the body through mummification ensured that the Ka could reunite with the transformed spirit, allowing continuity in the journey of life beyond death. Magic and transformation were closely linked to morality. Spells were effective only if used in alignment with Ma'at. Deception, greed, or malice could backfire, demonstrating that ethical behavior was as important as skill in the mystical arts. Myths highlighted that true power came not from domination or fear but from wisdom, devotion, and balance with the divine. Creatures of myth also embodied transformation. Shape-shifting gods, hybrid animals, and spectral beings illustrated the fluidity of life and the universe. Some were protectors, some punishing, and some guiding, teaching that change could be both dangerous and beneficial. Egyptians recognized that understanding and respecting these transformations was essential for survival, prosperity, and spiritual harmony. Stories of magical artifacts and divine interventions reinforced these lessons. Amulets could protect, sacred scrolls could guide, and divine symbols could alter reality. Pharaohs and priests harnessed these powers in rituals, linking earthly governance with cosmic order. Every act of magic, every story of transformation, emphasized the interconnectedness of humans, gods, and the universe. Through myths of transformation and magic, Egyptians developed a worldview in which change was natural, predictable, and deeply moral. Life, death, the divine, and the cosmos were in constant flux, yet guided by eternal laws. Magic was not chaos but a tool to navigate and harmonize with these forces. Transformation taught that life's challenges could be overcome, that justice could be restored, and that the soul could achieve immortality. In the quiet of night, imagine a world where gods shift forms to guide humanity, where the dead transform into eternal spirits, and where every spell, amulet, and ritual carries the power to shape reality. This was the universe of ancient Egypt, a land where transformation and magic were intertwined with the moral, spiritual, and cosmic order, inviting humans to understand, respect, and harmonize with the eternal forces around them. By embracing transformation and magic, the Egyptians taught that the universe was alive, responsive, and moral. The myths of change were lessons in resilience, wisdom, and devotion, reminding every observer that life and the divine were intertwined, fluid, and eternal. Through these stories, ancient Egypt revealed a timeless vision of a universe governed by law, morality, and mystical power. Ancient Egypt was not a monolithic culture. It was a land of diverse regions, each with its own traditions, deities, and rituals. From the fertile banks of the Nile to the desert edges of Nubia, local customs shaped the spiritual and cultural landscape. These regional variations were not isolated. Over time, they intertwined, merged, and adapted in a process known as syncretism, creating a dynamic and cohesive mythology that reflected the richness and complexity of Egyptian civilization. In Upper and Lower Egypt, local deities often held primary importance. In the south, near Thebes, Ammonius was revered as a creator and king of the gods, his power symbolized in grand temples like Karnak. In the north, near Memphis, Ptah, the god of craftsmen and creation, held central significance. Initially distinct, these deities and their cults eventually merged in complex ways. Ammonius became Ammonius Ra, combining the creative and solar aspects, uniting the religious practices of Upper and Lower Egypt under a single divine figure. Syncretism also manifested in the blending of mythologies. The story of Osiris shows traces of multiple local traditions. In some regions he was primarily a fertility god, tied to the inundation of the Nile. In others he became a god of the afterlife, associated with judgment and resurrection. Over centuries these local narratives converged, producing the complex Osiris myth cycle familiar across Egypt. Local variations were preserved in temple inscriptions and regional rituals, ensuring that while myths became unified, they retained a richness and depth that reflected local identity. Magic, ritual, and iconography were also influenced by regional differences. Symbols, amulets, and ceremonial practices varied by location. In some areas, the Eye of Horus was central to protective rituals, while in others, Bes or Tauret were invoked to guard households and women in childbirth. These regional practices demonstrated that Egyptian religious life was not uniform but adaptable, responding to local needs, environments, and cultural contexts. Political changes also encouraged syncretism. When a dynasty from one region gained control over the entire country, rulers often adopted local deities from conquered lands, elevating them in state religion to unify the populace. Pharaohs recognized that divine authority was reinforced when local traditions were honored, ensuring loyalty and reinforcing the cosmic order. Festivals, temple dedications, and royal patronage often reflected these strategic incorporations, blending local and national religious practices. Syncretism extended to divine identities as well. Gods could merge, taking on attributes of multiple deities. Horus, originally a sky god and protector of the king, sometimes absorbed qualities of Ra, emphasizing solar authority. Sekhmet, the lion-headed goddess of war, was occasionally merged with Hathor, goddess of love and fertility, creating dual aspects of destruction and creation. These combinations were not arbitrary. They reflected philosophical and theological attempts to harmonize diverse beliefs and explain complex natural and cosmic phenomena. Regional variations also influenced funerary practices and afterlife beliefs. In Upper Egypt, certain tomb rituals emphasized resurrection and the Osiris cycle, while in Lower Egypt, protective spells and household magic were more prominent. These differences merged over time, producing standardized texts such as the Book of the Dead, which incorporated spells and guidance from multiple local traditions. The result was a cohesive but richly layered system guiding the deceased through the underworld. Even art and iconography reflected this blending. Regional styles influenced depictions of gods, pharaohs, and supernatural beings. Temples featured localized motifs alongside standardized forms, producing a visual culture that was both unified and regionally distinctive. Walls and columns told stories familiar across Egypt while honoring local identities, demonstrating that syncretism preserved diversity while promoting cohesion. Syncretism also allowed Egyptian religion to absorb foreign influences. Nubian, Libyan, and Near Eastern deities were sometimes incorporated, reshaped, or merged with existing gods. This flexibility contributed to the resilience of Egyptian belief systems over millennia. The gods evolved alongside society, integrating new ideas while maintaining essential principles, such as Ma'at and the eternal cycle of life, death, and rebirth. Regional variations and syncretism extended beyond deities and myths. Ritual calendars, agricultural ceremonies, and temple architecture adapted to local conditions. Festivals might celebrate the same god in different ways, incorporating regional myths, songs, and performances. These variations enriched Egyptian culture, creating a civilization that was both unified and deeply connected to the land, its people, and their local histories. The Egyptians' approach to diversity demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of culture and religion. Rather than erasing local traditions, they integrated them, creating a dynamic interplay of ideas. Syncretism provided stability, legitimacy, and spiritual depth, ensuring that myths, gods, and rituals remained meaningful to diverse populations while reinforcing shared values. Through these processes, ancient Egyptian mythology remained both flexible and enduring. Local traditions contributed richness, while syncretism produced coherence. Gods were complex, myths layered, and rituals adaptive, reflecting a society that valued both the local and the universal. The Egyptian worldview embraced change without losing continuity, demonstrating a profound understanding of culture, identity, and the divine. In the stillness of night, imagine priests performing rituals at regional temples, invoking local deities while acknowledging their unity with national gods. Picture the festivals along the Nile, where diverse communities celebrated the same divine principles in unique ways. This intricate dance of variation and synthesis ensured that the spiritual life of Egypt was vibrant, resilient, and deeply intertwined with the natural and social world. Regional variations and syncretism remind us that ancient Egypt was more than monuments and pharaohs. It was a living civilization, responsive to local needs, adaptable to change, and committed to cosmic order. By blending local traditions into a unified yet diverse system of belief, Egyptians created a mythology that endured for millennia, rich, flexible, and eternally relevant. Ancient Egypt endured as one of the most remarkable civilizations in human history, but like all great societies, it experienced periods of decline. Understanding this decline requires examining political, economic, social, and external factors that gradually eroded the stability that had sustained Egypt for millennia. Yet even in decline, Egypt's cultural and spiritual legacy endured, influencing neighboring regions and leaving an imprint that resonates through history. The first signs of instability often emerged internally. Pharaohs, once absolute rulers, faced challenges in maintaining central authority. During periods such as the First Intermediate Period, local governors, known as nomarchs, gained increasing autonomy. The unity of Upper and Lower Egypt weakened as regional leaders prioritized local power over national cohesion. This fragmentation undermined the pharaoh's role as guarantor of Ma'at, the cosmic order, creating vulnerabilities to external threats and internal unrest. Economic difficulties further exacerbated Egypt's decline. The wealth of the empire relied heavily on the Nile's predictable inundation, which fertilized crops and ensured agricultural surplus. Periods of drought, shifts in river patterns, or soil depletion led to famine and resource scarcity. Trade networks, once robust, became strained, reducing the flow of essential goods and precious metals. Inflation and taxation pressures increased, leading to social discontent and eroding confidence in the pharaoh's divine mandate. Military decline also played a critical role. Egypt had long maintained a formidable army to defend its borders and expand influence into Nubia, the Levant, and beyond. However, as internal division grew and resources waned, Egypt became increasingly vulnerable to invasions. The Hyksos, a foreign Semitic people, exploited these weaknesses during the Second Intermediate Period, introducing new technologies such as the horse-drawn chariot. Later, external powers including the Assyrians, Persians, and Greeks would dominate Egyptian lands, gradually reducing the independence and authority of native pharaohs. Political fragmentation coincided with religious and cultural shifts. Local priesthoods gained power, sometimes rivaling the pharaoh. Temples controlled vast resources, influencing not only spiritual life but also economic and political decisions. While this contributed to a rich and vibrant religious culture, it also diluted central authority, creating competing centers of power that complicated governance. Despite these challenges, Egypt's cultural resilience remained extraordinary. Art, literature, and architecture continued to flourish even during periods of political weakness. Temples and monuments built in declining eras preserved traditional forms and ideals, reflecting continuity in religious devotion and aesthetic principles. Hieroglyphic writing, sacred texts, and funerary rituals maintained connections with the divine and reinforced the values of Ma'at, sustaining a sense of identity and purpose. One of the most enduring legacies of ancient Egypt was its religious and mythological system. Concepts such as the afterlife, divine kingship, and the balance of order and chaos influenced later civilizations, including the Greeks, Romans, and early Christians. Egyptian gods were incorporated into foreign pantheons, and Egyptian myths inspired storytelling, art, and philosophical thought across the Mediterranean. The intellectual achievements of Egypt also survived its political decline. Mathematical knowledge, medical practices, astronomical observations, and engineering techniques were preserved in papyri and monuments. These advancements informed later societies, demonstrating that even as political power waned, cultural and intellectual contributions could endure for centuries. Egypt's interactions with foreign powers played a dual role in decline and legacy. Conquests by Persians, Greeks under Alexander the Great, and Romans integrated Egypt into broader empires. While native political autonomy diminished, these periods facilitated cultural exchange, spreading Egyptian art, religion, and knowledge far beyond the Nile. The Ptolemaic dynasty, for example, merged Greek and Egyptian traditions, producing innovations in religion, science, and architecture, such as the Library of Alexandria, a symbol of knowledge and learning. Despite centuries of foreign rule, Egyptian identity persisted. Local traditions, religious practices, and artistic conventions continued, demonstrating resilience and adaptability. Even under Roman and later Islamic administration, Egyptian cultural symbols, language, and mythology influenced architecture, literature, and ritual life, ensuring that the essence of ancient Egypt remained alive. Egypt's decline also offers lessons about the fragility of power. Political fragmentation, economic strain, environmental pressures, and external threats combined to undermine one of the world's most enduring civilizations. Yet, through careful record-keeping, monumental art, and mythological continuity, Egypt preserved its identity and wisdom, providing insight into the nature of civilization, governance, and human creativity. In examining the legacy of Egypt, one sees not only what was lost but what endured. Temples, pyramids, tombs, and sculptures continue to inspire awe. Myths of gods, monsters, and the afterlife remain a window into how humans understood existence, morality, and the cosmos. Knowledge of astronomy, medicine, and engineering demonstrates remarkable intellect and practical ingenuity. These achievements remind us that the true measure of a civilization lies not only in political power but in the enduring impact on human thought and culture. Even as the Nile continued to flow and the desert winds swept across ancient temples, the spirit of Egypt persisted. Its stories, beliefs, and artistic expressions traveled across continents and generations, influencing language, religion, and culture long after the pharaoh's reign had ended. The decline of political authority did not erase the civilization's contributions. Instead, it transformed them into a legacy that would inspire humanity for millennia. In the quiet reflection of history, one can imagine the pyramids, temples, and tombs standing as silent witnesses to centuries of human endeavor, divine aspiration, and cultural achievement. Egypt's story is one of rise and fall, but also of remarkable endurance. It teaches that while political power is transient, culture, knowledge, and mythology have the power to outlast time, shaping not only the present but the future. The decline of ancient Egypt was inevitable in the face of changing political, economic, and environmental realities. Yet, its legacy demonstrates the enduring value of art, religion, knowledge, and morality. Through millennia, the civilization of the Nile continues to speak to us, a testament to human creativity, resilience, and the eternal quest to understand life, death, and the divine. As we reach the end of our journey through ancient Egyptian mythology, it becomes clear that these stories are more than myths. They are reflections of a civilization's understanding of life, death, and the cosmos. From the creation myths that explain the origin of the world to the intricate tales of gods, monsters, and heroes, each narrative reveals how the Egyptians sought to understand their place in the universe. The myths of creation introduced the fundamental principles that governed Egyptian thought. Through the actions of gods like Adam, Ra, and Ta, the Egyptians explained the emergence of order from chaos. These stories emphasized that life, light, and existence were the products of divine action, highlighting the interconnection between humans, nature, and the divine. Understanding creation was not merely philosophical. It shaped rituals, governance, and the ethical framework by which people lived. Gods and goddesses were central to every aspect of life. They represented forces of nature, moral ideals, and cosmic principles. Deities like Osiris, Isis, Horus, and Maat embodied justice, rebirth, protection, and balance. The myths surrounding these gods taught Egyptians the importance of truth, order, and ethical behavior. By observing rituals, honoring deities, and maintaining Maat, humans could align themselves with the divine order and ensure harmony in both the mortal and eternal realms. Supernatural beings, monsters, and magical creatures reflected the unpredictable and sometimes dangerous forces of the universe. Figures such as Apep, Ammit, and Sekhmet illustrated the duality of creation, chaos and order, destruction and protection. These myths reminded Egyptians that life was a balance of opposing forces and that understanding, respect, and moral action were necessary to navigate the challenges of existence. Transformation and magic further enriched Egyptian mythology. Through divine intervention, spells, and metamorphosis, gods and humans alike demonstrated that change was a fundamental aspect of life. Whether through the resurrection of Osiris, the protective magic of Isis, or the guidance of mystical spirits, the Egyptians taught that transformation was both a natural and sacred process, reinforcing moral lessons and offering hope for renewal beyond death. Regional variations and syncretism illustrated the flexibility and adaptability of Egyptian culture. Local traditions, gods, and rituals were incorporated into a broader national framework, creating a religion that was both unified and diverse. This blending ensured the survival of regional identities while reinforcing shared values, contributing to the resilience and longevity of Egyptian civilization. The decline of Egypt, marked by political fragmentation, economic strain, and foreign conquest, did not erase its cultural and spiritual achievements. Art, architecture, literature, and scientific knowledge persisted, influencing neighboring civilizations and leaving a legacy that endures to this day. The monuments, pyramids, and temples stand as silent witnesses to centuries of human endeavor, divine aspiration, and cultural innovation. In reflecting upon these myths, one recognizes that Egyptian mythology was not merely a collection of stories but a sophisticated system of thought. It integrated morality, spirituality, and cosmology into everyday life. Each narrative, each deity, each ritual served a purpose: to educate, guide, and connect humanity to the divine. The myths fostered a worldview where humans, gods, and the cosmos were intimately intertwined, each action resonating with meaning across the natural and spiritual worlds. As we contemplate the eternal Nile, the sun rising over golden sands, and the monuments that endure across millennia, it is evident that ancient Egypt's mythology offers timeless lessons. It teaches us about the fragility of life and the inevitability of change, the importance of balance, and the enduring power of moral action. It reminds us that culture, faith, and knowledge are the legacies that outlast political power and earthly existence. In closing, ancient Egyptian mythology is a journey through time, a guide to understanding human nature, and a window into a civilization that sought to harmonize the mortal with the divine. By exploring these myths, we gain insight into the ways people navigated uncertainty, celebrated life, and prepared for eternity. The gods, monsters, and magical forces they revered continue to inspire wonder, offering stories that are at once educational, moral, and profoundly human. Through the myths of Egypt, we are reminded that while civilizations rise and fall, their ideas, art, and stories can endure forever. In the quiet reflection of history, the lessons of the Nile resonate, a timeless testament to creativity, devotion, and the eternal search for meaning in a universe of infinite complexity.